November 12th, Saturday, November 12th, 1977, Jimmy Carter is president. And in Rover's Corners, Mississippi, Professor Willard is visiting, as he always does every Saturday, the Rover's Corners Senior Health Care Center. It's a residential place. And he tells some history because he's the unofficial historian of Rover's Corners in Mississippi. So on this particular day, he is telling the audience, which is about 15 people. It's the same 15 people every week. And he thinks, oh, this is so fine, I have this audience. But they never really come to hear him. They come for the cookies, was afterwards. Now the story today was about how Rover's Corners came to be known as Rover's Corners. But when about 15 minutes has passed, what happened was that immediately Miss Millie came out with her basket of cookies. And today the cookies were double chocolate chip cookies. And of course, everybody was excited. Now Millie has been doing this volunteer job for 25 years. And she has, for the last 8 years or so, been assisted by someone else. And what happens is, usually she gets Harold. And Harold is the newest employee at the facility. He's been working there 10 years. They don't have much, remember, in Rover's Corners. And then, somewhere, there is out the back door, there is this crashing sound, there is a scream, there is a thud, and then there's moaning and pain. Well, Harold runs to the back door. Immediately, 2 nurses' aides follow him, and Miss Millie is right behind. And there on the ground, next to the dumpster, is a black woman, an old black woman, probably in her 80s, all curled up. And you got to do something fast. And so Harold knew all the things to do. They got a stretcher, they got blankets, they got things to clean up the wound on her head. And they brought her in, and she seemed to be conscious, but she answered no questions. What is your name? Do you know where do you live? So Millie had called Dr. Gibbs. And Dr. Gibbs came and quickly assessed the situation. She says, she needs to rest. She needs to rest. I think that something's happened, and we'll just let her sleep tonight. And as she was going into the room there, Dr. Gibbs came to Miss Millie and said, I think she's had a stroke. I think she probably had a stroke a couple weeks ago. And when I look at her health, I don't think she has many more days left. And you, as the cookie lady, I suggest you just do anything here that could just give her a little bit of happiness. So, the next day, Millie comes, and she brings some of her double chocolate chip cookies. The chocolate chips. And she has a plate. Millie has a plate, and she hands the plate toward this woman, and then Millie goes, I don't know her name. Well, she had kind of a red scarf around her, and she looked down at the corner of the red scarf, and there in the corner, it said, Jenny. And so she said, are you Jenny? And Jenny goes, and Millie then says, are you Jenny as in ginger? And the woman goes like this. Well, there's progress. There's some recognition. So she has a handing the chocolate chip cookie, and Jenny grabs it, takes a bite, and immediately spits it out. Now, this Millie has never had anybody spit out chewing cookies. And so at that point, you know, she's kind of like, oh, terrified of this woman. And Jenny speaks her first word that she's been said at the care center. Awful. Well, you can tell the cookie lady has got her work cut out for her. She's going to try to do anything with cookies to make this woman happy. So she started thinking about it, you know, ginger. Maybe she likes ginger cookies. So that night she made molasses ginger cookies and brought in this wonderful soft cookie. There it is. Jenny takes a bite and she says, not like mother's. So Millie is thinking, oh my, how are we going to, you know, I don't know where we're going to go with this. And then so she, the next day, brought in a pinwheel ginger cookie that was filled with dates. Again, Jenny takes a bite, and this time she says, too fancy. And then the strangest thing happened. Jenny started trying to say something. She couldn't think of the word. She didn't know what the word was. Stage! And Millie is going, what is she talking about? I can't, a cookie that has to do with a steak. Is this a bakery? What is it? So Miss Millie goes home and goes through the cookbooks, those old cookbooks where she might be able to find some kind of recipe that said stage. Well, sure enough, she found the Picayune Creole Cookbook, the original and second best edition of great classic Louisiana French cooking. And she happened to go through and find on page 306, staged planks or gingerbread without butter or eggs. 1 cup of molasses, 1 cup of sour milk, 1 tablespoon of ground ginger, 1 gill of lard, 3 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon of baking soda. And there is the staged plank gingerbread. So she made her. The next day, she goes to where Jenny is and gives her one of these cookies. And they were kind of long and narrow and very tough. They were not a nice cookie, according to Millie. But Jenny took a bite, and another bite, and quickly 3 cookies had been consumed. So this was a really happy time. You know, this is the middle of the week now, and everybody's thrilled that something has happened that Jenny loves. So the next day, Millie takes some more cookies, the gingerbread stage planks, and, you know, Jenny was just smiling. Nobody had ever seen her smile. So Millie and Harold decided to get her in a wheelchair, and they would wheel her down to the sunroom and just, you know, give her some fresh air. And she went, and she was carrying some cookies, and she was eating them on the way. And as she comes, they wheel her back, and they go by the activity center. And on this day at the activity center, they happened to be playing the movie musical, Showboat, the 1951 version of Showboat. And then they noticed that Jenny was starting to get red. She's starting to get this look of horror and real anger. and she starts screaming, "Lena Horne! Lena Horne! Lena Horne!" And this guy in the back, "Oh, you old fool, that isn't Lena Horne, that's Ava Gardner." But at this point, Ginny is scared, What is this all about? I mean, why would she do that? So she decides to call up Professor Willard to see if he has any explanation why somebody would be so upset about two actresses. And Professor Willard said, "I don't know, but I think I know how I can find out some stuff about that movie." And what then Professor Willard did is, I think what might calm Ginny down would be to take her an album of Lena Horne, and Lena Horne singing her favorites, and the one especially from the show, "Can't Stop Loving That Man." They bring the record, and it was just like a great calm came over Ginny. And it was a beautiful thing. And that night, she died. The next day was kind of a strange day. It was the Saturday when Professor Willard was to back with one of his talks, one of his, whatever you want to call it, history talks that everybody had heard at least 5 times. And this time he decided that he wasn't going to give one of those old talks. He was going to write a eulogy for Ginny. And that is exactly what he did. You probably know Ginny passed away last night. We know almost nothing about Ginger. We've never seen her before this week. But I believe I can say that Ginny has had a great impact on everybody who works here. And I think Ginny was proud of her heritage. And then the professor, if I can speak, goes further. Slaves were not allowed to eat anything with ginger because it was expensive. After the war, there was a whole lot of black folks who had never tasted ginger and wanted to know why ginger was so popular among white folks. With their newly acquired freedom, they went and bought ginger to make gingerbread. But they couldn't afford eggs, and they couldn't afford butter, and they couldn't afford sugar, so it was made with molasses. And it was baked in sheets, and that was stage planks gingerbread. But in his eulogy, the professor took rates. The gingerbread was baked in flat pans and sliced in rectangles that kind of looked like boards. Or planks. On this area of the river, there were showboats. And when the showboats came into the area, they would take planks, wooden planks, and push them out from the showboat to the shore. And then on these planks made a stage. Now black people could not come on board ship, but they could be there outside on the boards, and they would put on a show. This was very exciting for lots of people. You got them to have some kind of entertainment experience. And then it came to be that those stage planks were the model for stage planks gingerbread. Well, what else was with that? The professor said in his eulogy. Some showboats featured a dance contest between black couples which was performed on the planks. The passengers voted on who were the best dancers, and that couple was awarded with a cake. That came to be known as a cake walk. This wasn't a movie. This was a real showboat. And then the tone changed, and the professor had debated whether he wanted to even go down this road, but he made a choice. I keep thinking about how Ginger got so upset with the movie Showboat. Lena Horne was very obviously important to Ginger. Lena Horne had a truly magnificent voice. She considered herself black, but she had light skin. She wanted to play Miss Julie in the 1951 version of Showboat. The Showboat story is Miss Julie passes as a white and falls in love with a white man. And then it's revealed that she has this black heritage. Lena Horne was a perfect fit for the play. But she didn't get the part. It went to Ava Gardner, who had to wear dark makeup for the role and had to have her voice dubbed for the singing. And why did Ava Gardner get the role? Because the character of Julie kisses a white man. A real actress, a black actress, kissing a white man, which is what the movie is about, the story is about. But the producers thought that would be too upsetting for Americans. And so they pulled the role from Lena Horne. Now, there happens to be one of the most outrageous and funny and crazy things I ever heard of in show business. That when they trained Ava Gardner to sing the songs, they had recordings of Lena Horne singing That Man of Mine. Can't leave that man of mine. So, it was a case of the fictional character being real life. It was like the Showboat story was actually Lena Horne's story. And so it was, the professor wrote, I wonder if Jenny knew why Lena Horne was denied the role. Even if only for a few days, I feel we were blessed to know Ginger. Isn't it amazing the stories that a little spice and a cookie can tell? And then he stepped away and said, I couldn't ask Miss Millie to work today because she became very close with Jenny, and I wanted you to have a taste of the stage planks. But we had to get those ready-made kind. And so she brought them, and you can get them on Amazon. Here was the package, and here's what they look like. And there's a tiny bit of frosting on them, because they're not very sweet. They're very hard, and I would suggest dipping them in tea, coffee, or Chianti. And so, that is a story of how a trade wind can carry a spice, allows it to be carried around the world, and it goes up the river. And that's the story.